the topic of tariff became hot, I think, the last 3 months of the election. It's always been talked about, but it's kind of like why I think tariff is the, best word in the dictionary. After love and after God and after religion, it's got to be tariff, right? Yeah. He's kind of giving a message.
And he's been saying that for decades.
He's been saying it for decades, but it became hot the last 90 days where it's like, well, if we do this, if we do that. What's your concern with tariffs?
Well, first of all, the U.S., you look at the place that tariffs have caused the biggest conversations over the last 10 years, it's been China. And Biden and Trump's policies on China have been virtually identical on this issue, right? I mean, Biden didn't take any of those tariffs off.
Sure.
He actually added export controls. There is a move towards a decoupling of the global economy from the U.S. and China that had very integrated supply chains to increasingly less integrated supply chains. Is that good, bad, or indifferent? There are some ways where it's good because you have more control over, you aren't going to be as vulnerable to political intervention stopping you from having stuff. We're finally starting to move some of our semiconductors away from Taiwan. That was a huge mistake the Americans made over the past 30 years, in the same way that the Germans made a huge mistake allowing their energy to come from Russia. And by the way, some of the Europeans are now talking about, let's do that again. That would be another huge mistake if they were to do it. So I believe that there is a utility for national security purposes in using the strength of U.S. economic policy, including tariffs, to help defend the interests of Americans and its allies. I also think that as the most powerful country in the world, you can use tariffs as a stick that can force countries to negotiate with you in ways that they might not otherwise. So I look at the Mexico conversation right now, and Trump willing to credibly say...
You may want to lift it up and put it back up.
Oh, thank you.
There you go. That's
Trump,
good, yeah.
Trump credibly saying, we're going to hit you hard, will make them take fentanyl more seriously, will make them take border security in the South more seriously. He will get more from them because he is willing to use sticks for the United States, and those sticks are less dangerous if they are tariffs. Yeah, I'm okay with that. I recognize that tariffs also have costs. We are in a very low tariff environment right now in the world. I think the average tariff on the average good globally is something like 3%. It's almost historic lows.
2%. Give or take,
it's really
2%.
low.
We only get $80 billion in revenue from tariffs. That's not a big amount of money that comes in.
It's not a big amount of money. So, I mean, the fact is that moving a little bit on tariffs, if it gets you some outcomes that you want, is not going to have a massive
Let me ask you a question. What would happen if we went to 25 points?
On everybody?
Everybody.
Well, there you would have a significant amount of near-term inflation, right? I mean, that would definitely happen.
So, okay. So, are you following?
And and you'd also have a significant impact on the stock market, which would come down, and corporates would take a hit that have exposure to all those markets, and so they'd have to pay costs as a basis of that. Those are the two major things.
Are you seeing how he's talking about lowering taxes or getting rid of it? And have you heard about him giving the speech on taxes lately?
Sure.
Okay. So,
I mean, there are costs to doing that, right? Because you're no longer getting that revenue.
For sure. I totally get it. So,
I'd really like to not see the IRS get defunded, because one of the best ways that you ensure that you continue to make revenue is to make sure that people that owe taxes actually pay them and are audited. So I do think that's important.
Yeah, but what he's trying to do is the concept of external revenue service. You heard him talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what would happen?
Which we have. I mean, he'll rename the existing organization, but yes.
But what would happen if we bumped it up from 2 points on average to 25 points? Hear me out here.
Yeah.
And that would be, instead of $80 billion a year, that would put us at around $1 trillion a year of rev that's coming in. Okay? That if you want to do business with us, that's the number. Now, obviously, it doesn't work that way. It's not black and white because, other things could happen.
Substitution effects.
Sure.
And they will come back and hit you with tariffs as well, and that's going to be a cost on you and all the same thing. Yeah.
No problem. So, but I think at 2 points, it's nothing. At 2 points. If we were to go to 25 and we stay at 25 for 4 years, hypothetically, and then he flips and he lowers taxes on individuals, okay, on individuals that are paying taxes, how would that sit with American people? Would they sit there and say, wait a minute, you're lowering my federal income taxes? Yeah. You're raising tariffs? Yeah. Interesting. I haven't done the charts to see how the numbers would work. People on the left said they'll never work. People on the right said it could work. How do you think the average day-to-day worker who hears that message saying, let's collect the money that we're not collecting with these other guys and let's lower our taxes would sit?
I don't know how it goes for people that hear the message, but in terms of how they experience the outcomes, I can tell you that people, when they get more money in their income or their taxes go down, psychologically pocket that, that's theirs, they earned it, it's their due. When inflation goes up, they're angry about that. That's not okay, and it doesn't balance off. So inflation has a significantly greater impact psychologically on people because they're paying that. Now, to be fair, Trump is clearly very concerned about one area of inflation, which he should be, which is oil. And the reason for that is because guys in the United States that are going and filling up their car actually see the price of oil, price of gas, every week, and they see it by itself, and so they're very sensitive to that. So that helps. And if you bring down the cost of oil, and let's say, so do you get oil down to $60 a barrel, which I think is plausible this year, and Trump is leaning into the Saudis to try to get them to pump more, and Trump is leaning into the regs to try to get, sort of U.S. drillers to do more, then you might be willing to take more inflation in other aspects, even though he'll get beaten up by the Democrats. And at the end of the day, that might be seen as a wash by the American people. So you might have more flexibility on tariffs. Now, there are some tariffs that he is talking about putting on that I think are a mistake. So, for example, Mexico, you want to hit the Mexicans really hard right now. They have a government they have a supermajority. They can make constitutional changes. The leader's very popular. She is oriented to do everything possible to get to a better deal. Trump will be seen as a winner. That's a smart place to use your strength. Canada, huge mistake. Why? Because Canada is heading into an election cycle. And everyone in Canada has become really angry about what Trump is saying. And as a consequence, both the liberals and the conservatives have to outplay each other in who's going to be tougher to respond to Trump. So he should have waited until after the elections if he wanted to hit the Canadians with tariffs, when the U.S. would have a lot more leverage and when the politics wouldn't be at play. Because instead, he's going to either have to back down, which makes him look weak, or he has to keep going, and the Canadians have to get into a vicious cycle, and it's going to cost us a lot more. And that we will see. So I absolutely believe that tariffs are an important, even an indispensable tool for the United States in foreign policy, but you want to use them strategically. You want to use them in a more, sort of actual, use judgment in how and when you apply them. Trump doesn't do that. Trump sees that he has a tool, and he's scattershot, uses it everywhere at the same time, and see how it goes, see how it sticks. And you break things that way. So it's not that he's wrong. His political instincts have always been incredibly sharp, but his willingness to actually think through what the implications of some of those knee-jerk statements are and knee-jerk policies are, even as the strongest guy out there, even as a guy who's consolidated power when so many of his allies are weaker, when the American economy is stronger, when the U.S. has a better technological position, when our military is stronger, he can still make big mistakes. And so I'd rather see him as my president, as your president. I'd rather see him minimize those mistakes.
Okay, so this is tariffs here, right? Mm-hmm. And you said you're not a globalist, but you believe in globalization.
Yes,
right?
Big difference, yes.
Big difference,
yeah.
Okay. So this is the amount of tariffs revenue used to come in for the U.S. government. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it's a different world today than it was before.
Yep, tiny.
Yeah. What we had before versus today used to be 80, 90%, late 1800s. Then it was 40, 50%. Till 1910s. Then we were still getting some tariff, 1930, 1940. And then all of a sudden, 1940-ish, 45-ish, goes all the way down to nothing. And we've stayed at that number, 2%.
Correct.
For a long time till today.
Right.
Okay. So who did that benefit? You're saying globalization, if everybody is doing better around the world, it's kind of good. People are making money. They're taking care of themselves. Stress is lower. Crime's going to be lower. Overreaction is going to be lower. Fine. But don't you think for a country that's helped, when you're looking at the numbers of what the deficiency is between how much China makes with us, how much they're making off of us versus us the other way around, don't you think he has the leverage to be able to say, look, we're just increasing everything on everybody because people are trying to do business with U.S.,
Well,
not
you
the
got
other
to
way
keep in
around.
mind that compared with the periods of time when tariffs were a lot higher, you now have global supply chains that are completely integrated. They weren't before. I mean, you look at U.S.-Mexico, and you'll have cars with components going back and forth sometimes 30, 40 times with, completely integrated U.S.-Mexico supply chain before it actually gets bought by somebody. You suddenly throw a 25% tariff across the board between U.S. and Mexico hits you back with that, then suddenly, you're literally breaking that supply chain in ways that makes absolutely no sense, given how corporations and jobs on both sides of the border have been set up for decades. So you don't want to suddenly break that, because that's going to cost your corporations and the workers in those corporations an awful lot. So you can't do that. You have to be careful at being more incremental. And this is what Scott Bessent is saying, right? Is that he understands the desire to move towards a higher tariff environment, but he wants to do it incrementally, and he wants to be using that power to get outcomes that are more beneficial for the United States. I accept the fact that there has been free riding in a low tariff environment by a whole bunch of countries that are not necessarily providing for the public good globally what they should be. China today is a middle-income country. They're not a low-income country. They have advanced technologies. They're ahead of us in post-carbon energy. This is a country that can afford to actually change around their trade relationship with us. They can afford to uphold intellectual property and stop ripping us off. And also, a lot of American companies aren't as interested in being in China because their economy is doing so badly right now. So the Americans have more leverage in that relationship today and should use it. Absolutely. But you've got to recognize that this is not 1925.
No, I recognize that's 1925, but it's also not 1980, 1999, 2000, where we keep doing it for everybody else and we're just kind of leaving that money on the table.
So who benefited from globalization, right? There are two groups of people that benefited, that really benefit from globalization.
Sure.
It's the top 10% globally,
Okay.
and particularly the top 1 and top 0.0001%, right? And then the global middle class that really benefit from globalization. And the people that didn't benefit from globalization were wealthy people from a global perspective, but in reality, middle and working classes in the United States and Europe and Canada and Japan and South Korea. Those are the people that didn't benefit. And the reason they didn't benefit is because all of the benefits that came to the wealthy were not reinvested into those countries in ways that would improve education, that would improve healthcare, that would improve social cohesion. They didn't do that. And that's why globalism has failed, because you can't be winner take all in a more kleptocratic system and forget about your own fellow countrymen, because they will say, screw you. And that's why you had Brexit, right? That's why you have all these Eurosceptic movements too. This isn't just the United States. It's not like the Americans are the ones that have uniquely gotten it wrong and everybody else is on the right side of this. This is a global phenomenon.
Okay, I just found where Yuval Harari was considered the brain of Klaus Schwab.
Oh, that's very different than going to take over.
The
Klaus
idea
Schwab.
was the fact that he could be his replacement. This is in the book, Technocracy, The Hard Road to World Order by
Okay.
Patrick Wood.
Yeah.
Okay, you read the book, you're thinking the guy's replacing him.
No, you're not.
No, you're thinking he's his guy, like he's the brain.
The brain. I mean, he is a very smart guy.
Yeah, but that's the premise of for you.
So the
for
fact
you to
that if
attack
someone
it, you're like,
if someone
Yuval Harari.
uses your ideas and informs your ideas and inform by him, you're going to let your
If
company be run by that person.
If somebody calls me the brain of, let's just say this guy's the brain, hey, that guy could be his replacement. That's how the conversation of Yuval Harari came in this book.
Okay, so I'm glad that you agree with me on that one.
No, it's not. I agree with you on that one. I'm telling you, that's what the discussion was about.
I thought someone was saying he was about to take over the WEF.
No,
That's not credible. Okay, fine.
That one is not. You're right
Okay.
about that one. But
Okay.
the other one is,
Okay.
this is what prompted that conversation.
Yeah.
But the tariff conversation,
I
let's
can
go
see
back
that,
to-
by the way. If you go back to his book, Sapiens, I can see why Klaus would have found a lot of those ideas very attractive.
Right. So going back to, and you've read Sapiens, I've read Sapiens.
Everyone's
you
read
know,
Sapiens, yeah.
Nowadays, more than ever, the brand you wear reflects and represents who you are. So for us, if you wear a Future Looks Bright hat or a Valuetainment gear, you're telling the world, I'm optimistic. I'm excited about what's going to be happening, but you're a free thinker. You question things. You like debate. And by the way, last year, 120,000 people got a piece of Future Looks Bright gear with Valuetainment. We have so many new things. The cufflinks are here. New future looks bright. This is my favorite, the green one. Just yesterday, somebody placed an order for 100 of these. If you watch the PBD podcast, you got a bunch to choose from. White ones, black ones. If you smoke cigars and you come to our cigar lounge, we have this high quality lighter cutter and a holder for the cigars. We got sweaters with the Valuetainment logo on it. We got mugs. We got a bunch of different things. But if you believe the future looks bright, if you follow our content and what we represent with Valuetainment, with PBD Podcast, go to vtmerch.com. And by the way, if you order right now, there's going to be a special VT gift inside just for you. So again, go to vtmerch.com, place your order, tell the world that you believe the future looks bright. If you enjoyed this video, you want to watch more videos like this, click here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click here.